Bienvenue au Petit Nouveau, merci d'être avec nous en présentiel au Quai des Savoirs de Toulouse ou en distanciel derrière votre écran. On va voyager, explorer, rêver dans quelques instants. Je vous rappelle qu'à tout moment, vous pouvez en envoyant un SMS au 07 69 69 38 33, vous pourrez poser les questions à notre invité. Alors, est-ce que ça vous dit de vous immerger dans un laboratoire caché dans une mine de sel sous la mer, de visiter des grottes norvégiennes ou les glaces flottantes du Groenland? Si vous n'avez pas encore lu Underland, carnet de voyage souterrain unique en son genre, on vous invite à découvrir son auteur qui a parcouru pendant 7 ans les zones les plus enfouies du globe. Voici en visio et en anglais Robert Macfarlane, auteur de Underland aux éditions des Arènes. Il échangera avec Christophe Ono-dit-Biot, directeur adjoint de la rédaction du Point. On peut les applaudir tous les deux.
Hi Robert, how are you?
Alors Robert est en mode mute pour l'instant.
We cannot hear you.
On est en train de faire les derniers réglages pour qu'on puisse l'entendre.
Alors je vais commencer par dire quand même un mot sur Underland et sur Robert Macfarlane. C'est une vraie star de ce qu'on appelle l'underground au sens propre, puisqu'il voyage à proprement parler sous la terre. Et si ça vous dit vraiment de vous immerger dans un laboratoire caché dans une mine de sel, de visiter des grottes norvégiennes ou les glaces flottantes du Groenland, si vous avez envie de vous promener entre les racines des arbres, alors c'est lui vraiment qu'il faut suivre. Il est parcouru, vous l'avez rappelé Boris, les zones les plus enfouies du globe pendant 7 ans. C'est l'auteur de nombreux best-sellers au Royaume-Uni. Il enseigne à Cambridge. Il publie régulièrement dans The Guardian, dans le New York Times, dans le Sunday Times. Et ses récits vraiment sur la marche, sur la montagne, sur le langage, sur la nature, sont devenus vraiment des références pour toute une génération. Underland a été publié aux éditions des Arènes. C'est un livre absolument dingue, plein d'aventures, de biologie, d'archéologie, d'anthropologie, de littérature, parce qu'il a un sacré beau brin de plume, Robert Macfarlane. C'est un livre que Le Point avait mis dans son top 30 des livres de l'année 2020, et c'est un podium qui compte, le palmarès des livres de l'année du Point. Et c'est véritablement un voyage jules vernien, 20 000 lieues sous la terre, là où personne ne va, là où normalement d'où personne ne revient, sauf lui. Vous êtes, Robert, l'un des, peut-être le meilleur d'ailleurs, connaisseur de ce que vous appelez un royaume de pure merveille. C'est vraiment Underland, une histoire d'amour entre l'humain et l'humus, comme on dit en français. C'est Orphée qui réenchante les enfers et qui retrouve Eurydice. C'est la poésie capturée par la science. C'est vous, Robert Macfarlane. Est-ce que maintenant, on vous entend?
Je ne sais pas.
Voilà.
Je peux vous écouter. Can you hear me now?
Yes, of course, it's perfect.
Excellent.
You
Excellent.
are not underground for the moment.
No, I'm not. But I am on top of 99 million-year-old chalk here in Cambridge, where I've just finished a week's teaching. But thank you then, Le Point, and thank you, Christophe, for that introduction, which my once decent French allows me to understand, but not to respond to as fluently as I would like.
No, it's okay. Thank you very much. I will start directly. Why, Robert, did you choose to go under when everyone seems to look up to the sky? We say sky is the limit, but you choose to go down. Why?
Yeah, well, I've spent much of my life going up. I'm a mountaineer, a bad mountaineer. I grew up climbing in the Alps, in the Scottish Highlands, and the first book I ever wrote 20 years ago was an exploration of altitude of the summits of peaks. In English, it was called Mountains of the Mind. And the ways in which mountains had come to fill my heart, but also that of millions of other people, and draw them up, sometimes at risk of their own lives, to their deaths. So I began on the summits, and then Underland, 20 years later, took me down. And I think, to answer your question more directly, we know so little of what lies beneath our feet. If we look up, we can see light that has reached us across trillions of kilometers of space. If we look down, try it now, your sight stops at your feet. And our ignorance of the underworld is mingled with our fear of the underworld, but also our great dependence upon the underworld. So I wanted to explore that a mélange of responses to the underworld: fear, fascination, innocence, ignorance.
Do you know Voyage au centre de la Terre, Trip to the Center of Earth by Jules Verne, Jules Verne's in English? Did you read it?
Yes. Yes, I do. I think if I had spent 10 years writing a book about the underworld and I hadn't read Jules Verne, then I would not have done my homework, as we say here in England.
Homework. You went to Finland, to Slovenia, to Italy, to Paris, and plenty of other places for your book. What was the most striking, the most wonderful, but surely the most meaningful?
Oh, wow, the most meaningful. Well, let me give you two answers to that. One, early in the book, I descended, as you mentioned in your introduction, into a salt mine in the northeast of England that extends many miles out under the North Sea towards Europe. Its tunnels, hundreds of miles of tunnels, are where, as a species, we have burrowed out under the sea in search of resources. For we are a burrowing species as well as a building species. But also down there is a dark matter research laboratory. And I became fascinated by this idea of the ways in which we research the furthest strangenesses of the universe, dark matter, this unknown quantity, this missing mass of the universe, deep underground, where the universe is quiet, where we might be able to hear the interaction of dark matter with our baryonic world. But this is useless knowledge, but it is set within the mind that is all about value, all about extraction. And the other answer I would give to that is, in the glaciers of Greenland, the photographs that you just saw on the screen, I descended a moulin, French word, of course, not a moulin rouge, but a moulin bleu, in this case, a mill of ice that the glacier itself has bored down into its belly. And I abseiled down into that, deep into the skin, the ice skin of that glacier. And it was like entering a living creature, but also a living creature in distress, because 2016 was then the hottest year in Greenland. So I was aware of ice as this vast power, but also one that was within our power, the power of the Anthropocene.
Did you also find some reasons to hope when you explored the depths? And do you think that underground maybe lies the keys of future?
Well, it's a very good question, and I found reasons to despair, and I found reasons to hope. I think the hope lay in many of the people I met, mappers, deep cartographers of this strange world, cavers, activists, explorers, archaeologists, anthropologists, microbiologists, because we now know that life descends into the crust for at least 7 vertical miles. Extremophile bacteria live down there. There is a microbiome that exceeds the combined biomass of the human species by many thousands of times in the crust. This is the biological dark matter, if you like. We are only just beginning to understand this, just as we are only just beginning to understand the ways trees communicate with other trees by means of the mycorrhizal fungal network, a mutualism that is around 400 million years old. So if there is hope, it is in mutualism, symbiosis, and how little we know, how ignorant we are as a species, and that we need to keep our humility in view. And I think the underworld does that to us.
We put our dead ones into the ground for an eternal rest. What does it tell us about we humans, according to you, this link? All we need to keep secrets, all the precious things we have, treasures, or yes, of persons we cherished and who are dead now, we put them into the ground.
Yeah, well, it was the photographs of the catacomb, of course, were behind you as you were speaking then, Christophe, and Paris knows very well that we place our dead for safekeeping underground, below your very streets in the south of the city, of course. It struck me after 5 years or so, perhaps it should have struck me earlier, that there are 3 great tasks of the underworld across cultures, across millennia, and they are to yield, to give, to provide metals, resources, language, to protect, and that is really what we do with our dead, and to dispose. So we get rid of what we don't want, waste. We pour it, the Cloaca Maxima in Rome, the great sewer. We place our nuclear waste underground because we don't want it on the surface. But the middle of those tasks is the idea of protection, of shelter. And the oldest practice of that really is the placing of the dead below ground for safekeeping, so that there is a site on the surface we can return to and address our dead, sing to them, speak to them, remember them, place flowers and stones upon their grave. There is amazing work I write about in the book by an archaeological team, predominantly female archaeologists working in a cave called Rising Star in South Africa. And they are working on very early hominin burial practices. And they think that Homo naledi, very early hominin, looks as though it was burying its dead several 100,000 years ago. And I visited a Mesolithic site in England, the earliest known burial site in England, 10,000 years old. And these were people living impossibly hard lives, but still they wanted to bury their dead. They wanted to place them underground. I think you said humans, you say humain and humus, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Humain et humus, oui.
Humain, humus, that is a common saying or a known saying
common
in French?
ground, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Vico, I think Vico makes that connection. So it's, yeah, we are humans because we bury, we come from soil and we return our dead to the soil. I find this moving and fascinating.
I was mentioning Orpheus and Eurydice and the trip, because underground in the very ancient civilization, it's hell. It's the house of the dead, it's hell. But do you think you have you have made a trip into death or into life? Because there is so much life underground.
Yeah, a wonderful question. And the other thing I would say about classical stories of journeys to the underworld, of which Orpheus and Eurydice is one of the most famous, is that though they are journeys to the dead, almost always one comes back with knowledge. Exactly. So the oldest written story is Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In one of the tablets of that, a journey is made to the underworld, great risk, but knowledge is brought back. So is that's something you recognize, Christophe?
Yeah, knowledge, but also life, because in your book, you're also questioning the nature, the little animals that you discover into this depth.
Yeah, I think to think of I began thinking of the underworld, the underland, as a place without life, almost a place without history, without human history, without biological history. And then I realized soon how wrong that was. And what I thought would be my least human book became, I think, my most human book. What I thought would be a book most about the past, Le Temps Profond. I realized that deep time, Le Temps Profond, extends into the future as well and becomes ethical in that sense. So yeah, again and again, I went looking for death and found life. I went looking for the past and found the future. So the Underland always surprised me.
Could you compare what you felt under when you were exploring the depths to the feeling that some people have felt during the coronavirus confinement, this sensation of being a prisoner?
Well, it was, such an interesting concatenation, I suppose, or sequence. So I wrote a lot about claustrophobia in Underland, inevitably. And claustrophobia I discuss both as a very individual physical experience. Cavers feel it, people who are trapped and die underground, of course, feel it. Workers, prisoners feel it. But I think as a species, it has become a sort of existential affect of the Anthropocene, of late capitalism, ecological crisis. We are running out of space and time. The world is narrowing around us, some of us more tightly than others. So to write a book about claustrophobia, to spend so long thinking about it, both individually in the heart and more existentially, and then 6 months after I published the book, even it was published in France during the pandemic, suddenly to see the world gripped by confinement was fascinating. And I received many letters from readers who were reading it within a single room. It's like Xavier de Maistre, a voyage autour de ma chambre. So, which was a book many of us were reading. Certainly I read again when the pandemic began and lockdown began. So yeah, did it feel like claustrophobia to you?
Oh, it was terrible for me. I was, I hated this period of time, but it's not the question. You saw during your trip all that man is burying into the ground. Of course, bodies, artifacts, also waste. Are you worried about the geological legacy that we will transmit to our children?
Well, yes. I mean, we might say that it is a rule of capitalism that if a new domain appears, it will be exploited. And a good example of that might be the deep sea mining, this new extractive horizon or frontier that is on the brink of being opened up through the Nauru clause, as it's being called. Too fast, far too fast. And a lot of hungry mining companies are using the fact that cobalt, which is available in volume on the seabed, is such a vital component of the green revolution and the just transition. But it's a deregulated zone there, and I fear very greatly if it's opened too fast. So, you know, humans have for a long time exploited the underworld. We are miners. That's how we've built. Minecraft is one of the most sort of psychically interesting video games out there, because it tethers and opens those very central principles of human civilization, which is we extract resource from the earth and we build with it. Paris is a city built in light, tunneled from its own bedrock, yes, the Lutetian limestone. So,
about the waste, for example, which is one of the main questions of the future. Yeah. What can we do with this waste, nuclear waste, all the waste that we put into the ground?
Yeah, well, two things are happening. One is a bad thing, which is that the Anthropocene says, how will we be remembered? We will be remembered for our waste. The strata, the rock record, is an archive, and it is an archive of that which is disposed of. So the Anthropocene thought experiment says, what will be that legacy? And at the moment, the answer is pig bones, plastic, and lead-207, which is at the end of the uranium-235 decay chain. This is not a great legacy. To answer very specifically the question of nuclear waste, the book Underland ends in Onkalo, the Finnish deep geological repository for nuclear waste, which is the only successful big hole that humanity has dug to put its nuclear waste in. And actually, I went there expecting a Gotterdammerung. I went there expecting the end of the world, and I found a site where, broadly speaking, humans were trying to be good ancestors in deep time. They were trying to take care of their waste across 10 to 50,000 years of legacy.
And do you believe in progress? In progress, maybe progressing using new technologies, we can solve this problem of waste. Are you optimistic about that?
Well, if you mean nuclear waste, I see nuclear as broadly a necessary part of a renewable energy mix going forwards, and so in that sense, vitrification holds nuclear waste successfully in volume in the short term on the surface, but we need to be much better at long-term safe disposal, and the Finnish version, it just shows us how difficult that is. In terms of the broader question of can we technologize our way out of ecological crisis, I'm broadly skeptical of the claims of a kind of thoroughgoing eco-modernist perspective, which says, well, we can geoengineer all solutions, because it seems to me that technocracy has got us into this problem, and I don't think it's the best thing to get us out of it, but it is part of what will be needed because it's an emergency.
To end on a shiny note, a wonderful note, if you had maybe three images of the wonderful things you discovered on the land, what would be the three things, these three wonders?
Three memories. Question. 3 memories. Understanding the Wood Wide Web. I don't know what you call that in French. I know Peter Wolleben and others have popularized the So the ways trees communicate with one another, the social media network of trees, we might say.
Oui, l'Internet des arbres.
L'Internet des arbres, of course. Merci beaucoup. And then the blue of time, I call it, which is, to me, the deeper down in a glacier you go, the bluer it becomes, and it soaks you like a dye to your bones. And it's also the color of memory, because glaciers remember. They remember for up to 1 million years until they melt, and then that memory is lost. Amnesia has come to ice. And the third is the tiny strips of color on a scientist's chart in the dark matter laboratory, which may or may not have been the great mystery at the heart of the universe, dark matter interacting with his experiments. And it was a search for God by a physicist, and the faint flickers of faith upon the paper.
Perfect, thank you very much, Robert Macfarlane. Donc si vous voulez lire, il faut absolument que vous lisiez son livre. Donc ça s'appelle Underland et c'est publié aux Arènes. Et c'est un très beau livre avec une couverture dure, comme un livre qui dure en fait. Voilà, c'est absolument magnifique. On lit quand le prochain? The next book in France. We're impatient to read the new one.
Oh, merci. Thank you. Yeah, that will come soon in The Old Ways, a book about walking. And,
ah bah très bien.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's read Before Walking with you, Robert Macfarlane. Thank you very much and see you next time. Bye.
Merci beaucoup, on peut vous applaudir. Merci pour cet échange très poétique. On voit justement derrière vous la couverture de ce beau livre. Écoutez, on se retrouve dans quelques instants pour la dernière session de notre journée. Elle sera consacrée, on passe du Coca Light à Goldorak.